Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Stephen Kissane. I'm the team leader of the Kabul Managed Aquifer Recharge Project preparation. The project is a 4 years initiation of a much larger project that will take place over the next decade, hopefully to bring groundwater levels across Kabul up to normalcy. By normalcy, I mean the pre-mined situation that existed in Kabul prior to the wars that started in the late 70s. You must excuse the branding in my presentation. My colleagues take branding very seriously. I'm afraid you're going to have to endure it throughout each slide. The project itself is funded by US aid. We've been very generous to Afghanistan, and it is directed to the country via the Asian Development Bank. And the beneficiary is the Afghanistan Ministry of Energy and Water. Most of the work is carried out by an Anglo-Irish firm called Landell Mills and a Danish aid project called DACA. It deals with refugees, internally displaced refugees within Afghanistan, and it's funded by DANIDA. So you have a North European component with Afghans, ADB, Asian Development Bank, and the US bringing the project forward. Let me see how this works. Next. Right. What I'm going to do today is give you a statement about the situation in Kabul, what we propose to do to address it, our feasibility assessment for MAR, and additional issues impacting feasibility studies. Quite interesting what the previous speaker was saying about Cape Town. We have exactly the same problems in Kabul, but probably more severe. Per capita consumption of water in Kabul is just 20 litres per person per day. It beggars belief, and it has enormous impacts on hygiene, the occurrence of waterborne diseases, and the general health of the population. The intention is, in the very short term, to get that consumption, average consumption, up to 80 litres per person per day, and ultimately to have a pipe water scheme across the city where everybody just opens their faucet or tap and they have the water that they require. There is no surface water capture, although there's lots of surface water. And unfortunately, this means that when it rains, and it rains a lot in Afghanistan and snows, the water flows down the Kabul River to Pakistan, and they benefit from the water, leaving the poor Afghans without the resources they need. You want to explain these two maps to you. The upper map on the right-hand corner, you see there's a red outline. That outlines the urban area of Kabul, and records which exist for groundwater levels, which have been measured from 2005 to 2017, have shown a decline in water level, which has been very dramatic. If you can see the white and orange areas to the west, northwest, and southwest of Kabul, in those areas, water levels have fallen as a result of up to 70 meters over a 10-year period. And this has been as a result of mining of groundwater to supply water to a rapidly expanding urban population. The population has expanded because the Taliban-infested areas of the country have been depopulating and people have moved to the city. Prior to the wars in the 70s, the city had 500,000 people. It now has 4.5 million people, which is a truly phenomenal urban expansion. The consequences of that you can see in the lower picture, that's the lower right, where you see the little red dots, you're getting subsidence. When you dewater an aquifer rapidly for tens of meters or scores of meters, you can induce subsidence. And subsidence last year in some areas in northwest Kabul was 10 centimeters. Another consequence is that boreholes which people have used for water supply have ceased to function. They've had pumps set at 50 meters as water level falls to get into a race to keep deepening wells to get water out for meager water supply, and ultimately the aquifer becomes totally dewatered. And in effect, there are two aquifers, which I'll explain to you in the next slide, but the upper aquifer in large parts of western Kabul has been totally dewatered. Right, USAID and ADB with the ministry are endeavouring to address this situation. The picture which you can see to the right is right in the centre of Kabul. That was a lake, and the intention is not just to deal with the groundwater situation, but to deal with the water challenges. And you'll see in a few minutes some of the positive actions that we've carried out with making that lake a national park with water. Right, a little bit about the geology of Kabul. It's a mountainous city. The purple areas in the geology there are basement, Precambrian in general. The yellow areas are Quaternary alluvium, and under that Quaternary alluvium, which is about 100 meters thick, is Neogene conglomerate, and you can see the outcrops of the Neogene conglomerate as the orange patches, which you can see in the southwest and to the south of the city. The Neogene is deemed to be a protected resource, although that can't be enforced. And the race to the bottom with regard to abstracting groundwater is basically deepening wells below the Quaternary alluvium to mine the Neogene conglomerate. The preparatory project, which is the phase we're currently in, has followed standard procedures. Assessments of the situation, hydrology, geology, hydrogeology, the environmental situation, and then moving on to the economics, and then the implementation via trial studies. And if the trial studies are shown to be correct, and they are, we then will move on to full implementation for over a 10-year period with very substantial funding. It's interesting, previous spokesperson spoke about funding issues which brought their work to an end. That's not the problem in Afghanistan. It's security that brings things to an end, but funding is generally there to do the needful. We've looked at 8 different technologies for getting water into the ground and 2 or 3 means for sourcing that water. The project has been inspired by work which has been done in Orange County in California, in El Paso in Texas, and Enfield Haringey in North London. I think some of previous speakers earlier today have mentioned those projects. But it was the experience of this work which basically led to people saying that what's been done in Orange County and Enfield Haringey and elsewhere, also in Saudi Arabia, with work done by the Prince Sultan Institute, this work could be applied to Afghanistan successfully. We have pictures here of the intentions which crossed people's minds when it came to sorting out Kabul's situation. You can see at the bottom an Orange County spreading basin. We now have spreading basins in Kabul, which are bigger than the Orange County. One of them is 16 hectares in size, 2 meters deep, which is pretty substantial. You can see at the top right what I call an above-ground intake well. These were designed by the Prince Sultan Institute in Saudi, but we've modified that design to make it more appropriate and more successful in the Kabul context. The pilot project looked at up to 6 sites. In the southwest of Kabul, we wanted to do spreading basins because there are abandoned quarries which have mined, not quite to extinction, but almost extinction, the quaternary gravels, but they rest upon fractured conglomerate, which is also highly permeable. With 3 sites, one was in private land and 2 were in government land. Over a 1-year period, we could not permit to get access to the government land quite incredible that one branch of government simply couldn't give another branch of government permission to use disused quarries. So eventually we rented a piece of private land, which is a large abandoned quarry, much to the relief of the local inhabitants, because their aquifers had gone dry and the old quarry was in danger of being turned into an unlicensed landfill. That's, if you can make out the text there, that's our Site 3. In the extreme north west, we have a Site 4. This is the most stressed part of the city. Groundwater levels have fallen 70 meters as a result of urban agriculture. Well, I say to people in this fine building, if you're confronted with urban agriculture in a city which doesn't have enough water for municipal supply, it's an outrage. And it's been an outrage in Kabul that commercial agriculture has basically raped aquifers to the detriment of human health for the general population. And we intend to put that right in northwest Kabul, and are putting it right. In central Kabul, you'll see a Site 6. The intention there is to have an injection well, which is actually water pumped into the ground, but the source water will be via induced infiltration from a shallower well beside the Kabul River. The intention is to treat the water by induced infiltration in a matter similar to what previous speakers have said earlier today, and put that water into the dewatered, deeper Neogene aquifer. And in the very center of the map, you can see our Site 5, which is beside an ephemeral lake. Now, come to that in more detail in future slides. Our source waters. There are two main rivers in Kabul. They're called the Kabul River and the Logar River. The pictures on the left are of the Logar River. Normal flow for about 8 months of the year is about 20 cubic meters a second. Not a lot by international standards, but it's quite okay for Kabul. And in spate flow, it goes up to about 100 cubic meters a second. And we just want a small bit of that to put into the ground. To the right, you can see the Kabul River. In general, the flows are less, between 5 and 20 cubic meters a second. But in recent spate flows, it's also been up to 100 cubic meters a second. They do have issues with sediment load, but we can deal with that. There's also a reservoir called Karga to the west of Kabul, and we built canals to take water from that reservoir to groundwater deficient parts of the city to inject water into the ground. I'll show you that in a future slide. Our MAR Site 3, which is in an abandoned quarry, this is the design we've used. We have a rather deep sediment pond where we take water from the Kabul River, let the sediment settle out, and then when it's of a sufficient physical quality, we let it into the main spreading basin, which is north of the settlement pond. We let the water infiltrate through fissures in the Neogene conglomerate. We put 4 piezometers into the spreading basin. They have structures which go well above the height of the 2 meters depth of water in the spreading basin, and they have telemetry-based equipment that keep records of groundwater levels. Before we sited this location, groundwater levels were not recorded. So boreholes which were up to 50 meters deep were dry. When we tried on the trial around the spreading basin, we got water levels up to 5 meters below ground level, which is acceptable. You don't want it to go too high, because you'll end up with causing a heave in the developments to the west of the spreading basin. These are pictures. The picture on the top left is of the spreading basin in operation. On the top right, you can see it, the source water with low flow in the, from the Kabul River. Bottom pictures show the structures that we have for monitoring groundwater levels. Substantial structures above ground level, so in times of flooding, they're still accessible. Our MAR Site 4 is an ingenious system. I challenge anybody to come up with anything as complicated as this for getting water for MAR to a target location. You can see at the top left the reservoir, which is about 40 kilometers west of Kabul. We have built, or at least USAID have funded the building of a canal that can take water at 1 cubic meter a second. That takes it to the edge of Kabul city, where it's then fed by a siphon. And the siphon conveys water for about 2.5 kilometers to a stilling pond, which has 2 above-ground intake structures that will permit the water when it is of sufficient quality, i.e. when it's dropped any sediment load that it has through channels, which you can see at the bottom right, to let water gravity feed into injection wells. This has now been constructed, and we've raised water levels at this particular location where they had been dropped to 75 meters below ground level. We've actually raised it to 50 meters below ground level. This is quite an achievement over just a couple of months. We have, as I mentioned, an ephemeral lake. We have challenges with water quality, getting water to the site. We have built, at least Canadian aid have built offtakes from the Logar River. But unfortunately, the offtake has to travel 12 kilometers to the ephemeral lake area. And over that 12 kilometers, practically every residence along the route puts the liquid effluent into the canal. So the quality of the stuff that arrives for MAR at this location is pretty appalling. But we have a solution. We have here pictures of the offtake on the top left. And you can see in the middle of the top, the canal that leads into the ephemeral lake where it's unused. We have cleaned that up. There are reed beds now in the, okay, yeah, I'll do it quickly. There are reed beds now in the ephemeral lake, and these are used as water treatment. We have water entering the reed beds with fecal coliform too numerous to count, and water that leaves the reed beds, perhaps 1 or 2 fecal coliform or none at all, and it's acceptable for injection. The bottom right, which is work which I did with the Prince Sultan Institute in Saudi, with above ground intakes. This is what we're building currently at the lake, at the ephemeral lake site, to put water into the deeper neogene conglomerate. We've established monitoring systems. You have pictures of me here holding telemetry data loggers. So with the security situation in Kabul, we don't have to send people out to measure water levels anymore. With the wonders of modern technology, the data comes to us. The way forward, we have selected multiple sites for injection wells, above ground intake wells and impounded water, and sites, as you can see in the bottom right, where we will put large diameter dug wells with infiltration galleries via a system of dilute and disperse clean groundwater close to camps which hold thousands of displaced persons, which have resulted in gross contamination as a result of soakaways. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions? I can't really see.
They're all happy. Good.
If not, I'll ask one. I hope this project brings peace to Afghanistan, maybe the most important thing Americans leave behind. How do you plan to hand over, particularly the scale of infrastructure, to the government of Afghanistan?
I'll let a few secrets away. The budget for final implementation is $50 million. And each spreading basin costs about $500,000. So $500,000. So there could be up to 100 spreading basins. There are preserved open areas in the city where we can put the spreading basins, and in areas where that isn't achievable, either above ground intake wells or injection wells would be used. We're looking at about 150 of those. Funding isn't the issue, security is the issue.
But I mean, at some point, the Afghans will need to take over to look after all those infrastructure.
Yes. One of the challenges, that's a good question. One of the challenges with training Afghans is getting permission from states outside Afghanistan to give them visas to train. And I've had this problem with Spain here. Wouldn't grant the deputy minister a visa. I've had the problem with China. We wanted to send last year people for training in Chengdu in China. The Chinese government would not give them visas. And the USAID, which funds the entire thing, wanted to bring people for training in Orange County and in El Paso. They also could not get visas. It is a big problem. And the solution ADB have come up with is to bring the academic institutions to Kabul. Transferable water rights expertise from Queensland and Australia, and expertise from the Prince Sultan Institute in Saudi are being brought to Kabul to train Afghans. But it is a very slow process. It needs improvement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We heard two very wonderful presentations on working under challenges. That's quite something. So thank you very much. And